Hey guys, in this video I will show you how to do Pepsi Max commercial using Blender and After Effects. We'll go through modeling, texturing, UV unwrapping, animation, lighting, fluid simulations, post-processing, all of that kind of stuff. So let's get started. So here's the quick time-lapse of modeling. All the references will be provided in the link in the description that will be for references. The modeling is super simple, nothing complicated, and if you don't want to do the modeling, you can look on the internet on websites like CGTrade, Sketchfab, Blend Swap or Blender Kit add-on if there are any cans, so you can just download, pick it from here and follow the tutorial. Alright, so in this case, UV unwrapping and texturing will be pretty easy. With the UV unwrapping, we'll just add a couple of seams. The first seam will go like that, from the bottom all the way to the top. We actually have to deselect a couple of vertices that are at the top of the can, just like that. Mark seam. So that's the one seam. Another seam will be here, where the graphic would end. If you take a look at any can and look where the graphic is, that's where we put our seams. So we put the seam at the top, and we have to put our seam here. The graphic would end. Go mark seam. That's it. And at the top, let's add another couple seams because we'll be projecting this fingerprint on our can. So let's add mark seam here, and let's add a couple mark seams here for this object. This, boom. So that's it for marking seams. Now let's add some textures, and then we will be playing with the UV maps. So in the meantime, I've added two materials to my can. First material is for the metallic only part, so without the graphic, and another material is for where the graphic should be. I also prepared already notes for myself, so let's go through these. The first one is of course the label, so that's the Pepsi Max graphic. The other one is base color for the fingerprints texture, roughness map for fingerprints, and normal. These are connected to the mapping node, and we'll later adding this to the UV map that we will create only for fingertips. Here we have add node that basically combines the label with the base color, and we have roughness that goes to the A and B is 0.3, so that will be our roughness of the can plus the roughness from this map. And here we have basic normal map, so let's plug these. So that's the UV map that is basic. So the UV map without any numbers is the basic UV map. Nice. You just have to unwrap, and as you see, there's complete mess. So let's just select this. I cannot unselect this one because I don't need this. And just with the UV layout add-on, I will give a link in the description to this one. Let's click rectify, rotate, and scale to fit. So that's it for projecting the label. Now let's go with fingerprints. And first off, we'll add fingerprints to the can where the graphic is. And for that, we have to create another UV map, just clicking the plus. So I'll delete these two. Add plus. One more time. Let's just switch to the fingerprints texture. And as you see here, we have some pretty decent UV map already. It came from the previous UV map that we were doing. So let's just go to the shading and plug UV map node to vector. And as you see here, these are pretty stretched, so we have to do UV maps one more time. So let's go unwrap, and we are doing unwrapping on this second UV map. Let's go rectify, and scale this. Very important thing is that you have to keep these vertices and these on the edge of the texture, because otherwise this will be not seamless. You will have obvious seam. So let's do it real quick. No seams at all. Here goes our seam. So now with the graphic done, let's go with the body. We have to add the UV map, another one, and we will be unwrapping this for the body. Click UV unwrap and see the results. Okay, it's not bad. If you wanna, of course, you can tweak some settings to adjust it for your desired result. Another thing I wanna cover is how to add droplets. So I have an add-on called Droplet Generator 2.0, I believe, from Blender Market. It's really cool. It costs like 10 or 15 bucks and gives you a lot of settings to play. Just add more density, and it gives you the possibility to even animate the droplets going like that. Look, we animate it. Really cool. But there's also a free add-on for adding droplets. This is much simpler. I will give you the link in the description for this one as well. So for the scenes, animation, lighting, this is pretty simple, and let me go through these scene by scene. So with the first scene, the lighting is pretty simple because the idea here is to give the impression that the product is new. So let me go to the rendered view, and just I have 3 simple lights, and these 2 lights are to give the lighting for sides. Animation is very simple because it's just camera pan to the back, like you see here. On one axis that is the y-axis, going back. And very important thing for camera in product animations or product renderings is to actually have the focal length set to different value than 50. For product, I would say it's almost every time something like 80, 90, 100 millimeters or even more. Because in the 50 millimeters, it's like the fisheye effect. Or maybe not really fisheye, but you get idea, I'm sure. So that is for the first scene. The second scene is a bit more complicated in case of lighting. Okay, let me go through each one step by step. So I will just leave one light, that is the spotlight. And as you see, this light gives just a bit of the fill. So it's like the fill light, I would say. So let's turn on the area 1 and the area 2. These 2 lights could go without this spotlight, I guess, but I just wanted to give it a bit more of this fill effect so that it's not really that dark. And these 2 lights are working perfectly because these add so much contrast, these add these shadows. And that's the purpose, in fact, of the product rendering or animation. As you see here, I have 2 lights going from the side. That's what you have to achieve with each of the lights. Just leave it, make a screenshot, not joking, and try to recreate this effect, because I think that looks neat. That's the second light. You see, this looks epic with just 1 light. The spotlight is very simple, just going from the top. Values, as you see here, just 10, that's it. For the spot, it's even 2 watts. And this is well-known backdrop. Very simple stuff, just, you know, plain and bevel. For the animation in this scene, and as you see here, there is some kind of depth of field. I turned it on here, but you can turn it on going into the camera and depth of field and just play with what looks great. And you have to add 1 empty object that is at the top of the can, and to this empty object, give your depth of field. Next step, to do this animation where it goes from the left to the right, I actually did this using object constraints. Go to the camera, add object constraint, track to, and track to the empty. And you're doing the animation just with G. So just keyframe 1 setting when it looks great, and then go all the way to the end and just find another spot. So that's my last spot, location, and I want to find the first spot. And here we have this simple animation. I didn't want to go with just empty here, because with empty it was too linear, that's just only the rotation. But I wanted to add this little zoom out, zoom in and zoom out. And it looks really cool, in my opinion. And the last thing, talking about the animation here, is to actually play with the graph editor. It is super important because many animators just skip the part of playing with the graph editor, which is a mistake. Let's play this animation. It's very simple. But if you just select everything, go to individual centers and scale this, you will see that representation, and it means that you go slow, bam, and slow. Take a look. Of course, you don't want to keep this like that. You can do this. And it looks just much better, right? It looks much better. Of course, it depends on how your animation looks like. Alright, so here's another scene. And this scene is made just for the music. I mean, the only way that the animation works here is to fit the music, and it's normal. You just have the music, you put it in your video sequence in Blender and just animate to fit the music, to feel the vibe of the music, because that's the key of the good, well done animation, to fit the music with the animation, or the animation. And to get the idea, to get this hero effect here, I just put the camera a bit more rotated than just 90 degrees. Here it's even 105 degrees. Okay, so for the rotation of this can, there's just only one z-axis. And as you see here, there is so much playing with the graph editor because it has to slow down and then release super fast. Look. It's so fast that it looks almost seamless. Like here's rotating so much and here's going back, as you see here. And I will show you that's how the graph editor looks like. Here's the V to vector, and here's just normal Bezier, and here's free actually. So here's vector, free, and normal. You have to just adjust it, just play with it. Really, graph editor is a big thing. For the lighting is also pretty simple because I used only 2 lights here, and these are gradient lights. My favorites. Very important thing to use gradient lights because you don't want to have this harsh lighting. I will do a separate video on that, why you should use gradient lights instead of area lights. Of course, sometimes it's fine to use area lights or even point lights, something like that, like you saw in previous scenes. I would say in most cases, when you wanna really show the product, you should go for gradient light. And you do this really basically because you just have to go to shader editor and copy that nodes tree. With the location X or something like that, you can select how much gradient you actually. That's the really basic lighting. And very important thing is to enable motion blur, because it really adds the smoothness to the animation when you have the motion blur turned on. And another scene, settings for lighting is pretty similar, but here you have the animation with rotation of the can, like the can is rotating, of course. Let me turn off the droplets. Here the can is rotating, very similar like in the previous example, but also here you have the camera animated, where it goes on the Z axis, like you see, very subtle, very subtle, but it goes to the top. That's how I animated this. And in this case, it's like previously, you have to edit a bit with the graph editor. And the last scene of the animation, which is not the last scene we'll be covering, is the scene that is also very simple. The animation for the camera is just pan animation on one axis, and the graph editor looks also very simple. So it was just on the local Z axis, just G double Z and go down. And here you can see also there's some fun with the graph editor, just do it. And for the lighting, I use the area lights. Also very simple setting. This light, oh, actually let me disable and enable some lights. So here's the first light, that is the area light. And as you see, this just gives some key light. And let's enable these. These give really subtle reflection for this part of the can, and this one gives the light to the middle of the can. Also pretty subtle. And the last thing, this is the key, I would say. This is super important for can product rendering or product animations, especially when you're dealing with like very dark environment and when your product is dark and when it loses the shape. As you can see, you can't really say what shape it is. So to define this shape, you just add the plane behind, and look, this looks nice. You see the shape, this is obvious that this is the can. Really simple, really subtle. You see, this is very simple thing and it's very subtle. Just the touch is all it takes. And of course, for all the scenes, you have to go to color management and change the look to medium high contrast or high contrast. We'll also be doing some compositing in After Effects later on. Okay, so last 2 scenes that I want to cover with you in this tutorial are the fluid scenes with the fluid simulations. So starting with this scene that we have this fluid coming over the can. So this bases on the curve guide force. I am using flip fluids add-on, and for this one you just have to add so starting from setting the fluid simulations, so you perhaps could go with even Manta flow. So with hidden lights we have our domain here, we have the curve guide that goes like this. So you just have to get the path object and just sculpt it around the can. And here I have the outflow object. So it's the object that takes the fluid out of the scene, so that thanks to that the scene isn't too heavy. And here we have our sphere that is the inflow. So it's the object that generates the fluid. So I think the best idea would be to just show the settings that I have for the flip fluids. Yeah, I would say for this fluid simulation, it's mostly about trying to get the desired result. There are plenty of tutorials on the internet on how to do the liquid around the curve. I even saw some tutorials that use the geometry nodes system within Blender. So, and personally, I think it's worth it to pay for the Flip Fluids add-on because MantaFlow sucks. Don't use MantaFlow if you really don't have to. And that's what we have. Let's reload the frame and here how it looks like. These black particles are white water, and white water are like bubbles, foam. What you really have to pay attention to is the size of your objects, because flip fluids, or generally speaking simulations, are really different when you have different world sizes. Like look, here I can show you. Here you have the domain sizes. So these are pretty big, and that's good for flip fluid simulation, because flip fluid simulations, I mean, you have two settings, right? You have flip and you have APEC here, simulation method. And flip is better for very random, like splashes, something like that. This is very good for flip fluids, or something like that when I want to have this randomness. I want to have randomness here. So I go with flip, and to flip, the best way is to have pretty big world size. You can also change the world size using just one Blender unit equals X meters. So you can just put, I don't know, 5 meters, and look how big the world is now. Pretty simple. And the simulation would look probably even better. You have to test this out. I won't give you the exact value that you have put here and there. You have to test your things. That's what the art and I would say the learning process is all about, right? So let's go with the lighting and animation. Animation is pretty simple, like in many other scenes. It's just camera on the Z local axis, and similarly using some curve guide to just give some time to just slow this down very smoothly. So with animation covered, let's go to materials for the Coke. And Flip Fluids, I don't know why, but it likes to reset just materials. So I added a cube that has these materials with the fake user selected. So let me add materials real quick. And for the Coke, you can go even with more translucent, transparent material, more than I did. It's like this. Take a look. That's my material, but feel free to go with, I don't know, something even like 1. Maybe that's too much, like 5. All depends on the lighting that you will do. It's important to just adjust it for your feelings, like on art. And for the lighting that I went here is 2 planes and 1 area light. So let's hide this. And what area light does here is to give that rim light for the can and for the liquid also. And I have a plane light that is the gradient light that adds the key light to the scene and also highlights the liquid where it is. And the last thing is to give a bit of reflection. That's just a plane without any material whatsoever, and another backdrop with just dark, pure black, roughness 1, specular almost 0. Have none reflection from the planes, from the studio. Alright, so here's the last scene that I want to show you how to do. And the lighting is pretty complicated because here we have like 4 lights and 2 planes that are reflecting the lights. So let's start from just the lights. I will show you what each light does. So let's turn off. Let's go with the first light. So this light, this will be more like a bit of reflection. That's it. This one too is very subtle. Another light and another story, just adding some light. And here we are. This just lights all the things. This is pretty flat light. Let's enable all of these. And these two just give, for this part here, these 2 planes just give some kind of reflection, so it's not really black. Take a look. Without these and with, there's a huge difference in that. So that's for the lighting. From the animation perspective, it's pretty simple because it's another time that we are going with the object constraints with the track 2. So like in this scene where we had the scan from the top and we were doing the rotation, you have to go just, pick 2 frames and just go with it. That's it. Pretty basic stuff. And we have for this empty that is here and that we are constraining the camera to, we are adding the depth of field and again playing with the f-stop to get the result that you want. For the fluid simulation, I again used the curve guide. I tested a few things and this curve guide worked the most for me. So that's why I picked this way of doing the thing. And for the can, you actually have to add the solidify modifier, and perhaps you might have just take a look. I have two objects. I have can final and can obstacle. You see this is very inflated, so much inflated. And there's also the additional geometry going on here inside. So you just have to try a lot of things. But the basic idea is that you can't have a thin object because then the fluid will just go through. You must have a very, very thick object to not put the fluid through. And that is also to do with the world scale. The world scale has to be pretty huge because, as you can see here, it's 10 meters high can. So in reality, it's obviously won't happen, but come on, it's free. So that's it for the obstacle. So just, you know, duplicate your can, play around with the settings, make sure that it's very thick, and just test a couple of things with your can. And I'm sure one of these will work. For the domain, as you see here, I will go really quick through settings that I have. And here's the force field. So this is a very simple curve going from the can all the way to the bottom. And here are the settings for this one. Here we have inflow. The inflow is obviously generating the fluid for me. And of course, realistically, I mean, in real life, it would be like you will be taking the can and just pouring the liquid, but that's how I figured out that it will work for me. So here we have the inflow, we have the outflow. So again, we want to just without any reason generate additional geometry for the scene, and we won't make the scene too big. And we have also the outflow for the can, because inflow is generated in, the fluid from the inflow is generated in many directions. Just add the outflow and that way you won't have any unnecessary liquid. And yeah, just hit motion blur and go to the render with the samples that you need. And that's it. Let's go to After Effects part. All right, so welcome to After Effects. So basically, I just did color correction. So for color correction, I actually use the Lumetri color because it's pretty similar to camera raw filter in Photoshop. So I went with Lumetri color, and in Lumetri color, I changed the, as you see here, you can just copy it. Then in creative sharpen, very important is to sharpen. So pretty much I just changed in these two. That's for the first scene. You should go for, I would say, brighter tones. That are colder, like white. For this, I also used the selective color. It just helped me to get the consistency through all of these scenes to get the red color for the Pepsi logo correctly. For this one, the same story. So selective color helped me with popping out the colors. And here the Lumetri color, as you see here, same story, Lumetri color, selective color. And here, same story, Lumetri color, selective color, here as well. And for the last scene as well. So as you see here, it's more about the trying to get the right color that you want than just picking exactly the same value as I did, because that's not what it is. And as you see here on renders, when I loaded the render preview, it wasn't as looking as great as it's here, because look, if I turn off both effects, this is dull, this is like dark, but it's fine, right? Because that's what the post-processing is for. You can't get perfect results with rendering. Of course you can try, and that's it for the After Effects part. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, check out my other social medias, and when you will be following this tutorial, feel free to tag me on your social medias so I can check out your work and leave you a follow. Thanks, and see you in the next one.